everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. And thank you also for your patience as we figure out this tech. We are so happy that you have carved out a few minutes of your schedule to be with us today. If you are new to the Circle of Atonement, as I know some of you are, welcome. I'm Emily Bennington, and I'm here with Circle founder Robert Perry. And what we thought that we would do today is offer a preview of the Circle's upcoming Holy Week activities for those of you who either don't know about this special series of events that we're offering or aren't quite sure how it's all going to work. As a very big picture overview, I'm sure that you know Holy Week is the time between Palm Sunday and Easter Sunday, and it represents the final days of Jesus's life here on earth, as well as his resurrection. Holy Week is obviously a very sacred space on the calendar. So many of us grew up in traditional Christian churches and celebrated this time. And if you're like me, you miss it. And again, if you're new to the Circle, it may be helpful for you to know that our ethos here is that we go by the book, which means that it's important to us that all of our teachings honor what's on the page in the course. And so it's wonderful when the course specifically references events that we already hold dear. I'm thinking particularly about Easter and Christmas. And so this provides us an opportunity to have our own honoring of these events as students of this path. So if you already know that you would like to join us for Holy Week and are just wondering what to do, you are welcome to visit circleofa.org/events, and you'll find all the information there. And if you require a scholarship, you should know, as always, that no one's turned away from Circle programming for an inability to pay. So if you would like to join us, but you require a scholarship, please just email info@circleofa.org, and we will be happy to provide one. What we thought that we would do in this very quick preview is go through each event that we're offering for Holy Week and just have Robert explain a little bit more about what we'll be doing for each one. So our Holy Week calendar is 5 events. We're starting this Sunday, March 28th. It's Palm Sunday. And we're having another event on Maundy Thursday, Good Friday, Holy Saturday, and of course, Easter Sunday. Every event starts at 11 a.m. Eastern. They'll run about an hour, although don't be too married to that time. We may go over just a bit. And all events, I should also mention that all events will also be recorded, and you'll receive a recording hopefully same day. We're aiming for the same day so that you can catch up at your convenience if you can't attend every event live, and so you won't miss anything. Robert, is there anything that you think that I missed there?
I can't think of anything. I just wanted to add that one of the inspiration behind doing this is the course specifically addresses Palm Sunday. It addresses the Last Supper, which of course is what is celebrated on Maundy Thursday. It addresses the crucifixion, which is Good Friday. It addresses the resurrection and Easter. So almost every single day in our 5-day plan here comes straight out of the course.
Yeah. So let's just go through every event quickly. As I mentioned, we are starting this Sunday with Palm Sunday, and Palm Sunday obviously commemorates Jesus's entry into Jerusalem. So what are the plans for our Palm Sunday event?
Well, Palm Sunday is addressed at length in a whole section in chapter 20 of the text. And so we'll be looking into that section and basically looking at 3 things in it. One is how it frames Holy Week itself. Another is how it applies the events of Palm Sunday and the events of Holy Week to our own spiritual journey. And a third is how it applies Palm Sunday and Holy Week to other people. and how we are the role that we're supposed to play in their own journey, symbolized by the journey of Jesus through that week. And we'll do an exercise and about giving them lilies rather than crowns of thorns.
And we're also planning to have breakout groups for all of these events so that we're not only sharing course teachings, but everyone who attends will have the opportunity to break into smaller groups and discuss what they've learned with fellow students who are joining them for the Holy Week activities as well.
And also kind of discuss the baseline, like what have these days meant to you in the past?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Because as I was saying, so many of us already have an association with the Holy Week calendar. And it's great to see what the course does with the reframe of some of these ideas. And I look forward to diving into that more next week as well.
Yeah.
So we have Palm Sunday is the first event. The next event is Maundy Thursday, and that typically represents the Last Supper. And so we'll be talking about the course's reference to the Eucharist. Do you want to say more about that?
Well, yeah. There's several references in the course to the Last Supper, the Eucharist, that are not positive. The course sees the whole idea of communion in very different terms than partaking symbolically of Jesus's body and blood. It sees communion in a very different way. And the way it talks about communion really intersects in a really interesting way with what scholars assume was probably the real roots of the Last Supper tradition. At least the scholars that I've read, the more liberal scholars, don't particularly believe that Jesus instituted, the Eucharist on the night in which he was betrayed. But that the idea goes back to his practice of table fellowship, where he would dine with people from across all kinds of social boundaries. And that practice in his life actually fits very well with the concept and even the imagery in the course of what he calls true communion. So we'll talk about that. And obviously there'll be an experiential component as well.
Yeah, you mentioned that the course doesn't look favorably on the Eucharist, and that's a classic example of the kind of reframe I was referencing earlier that happens all throughout the course. He's not a big fan of the idea of a ritual representing the eating of his flesh and the drinking of his blood.
Right, which has been a controversial thing since the earliest days of Christianity. But those of us who grew up in the church, it just seems so normal that you don't step back and really think about it. When I first read those teachings in the course, I was a bit disturbed. But when you think about it, getting closer to Jesus by consuming his body and blood is not something you would expect the course to have a different perspective on that.
Right. Well, this is I would love to dive into that more, but this is a preview. So
we will.
We'll have to leave it there. The next event in our Holy Week calendar is Good Friday. And this is obviously the crucifixion, Jesus's crucifixion. And the course has a range of teachings on this idea. And it says that there is a message in the crucifixion itself, which we'll obviously go deeper into as well. But what would you like to say about our Good Friday activities in the Circle's Holy Week schedule?
Yeah, well, here as well, the course does not emphatically rejects, in fact, the traditional interpretation of the crucifixion. And it offers a new interpretation. This is primarily found in chapter 6 in the text, but there's echoes of it elsewhere. And this new interpretation is not only theologically different, it's extreme. The whole point of it is the practicality of it. In the course, Jesus sees the crucifixion as a teaching demonstration where he's acting out a message that ends up being a message that applies on a practical level to every day of our lives. So it's one of those cases where the course takes something that has been traditionally seen in a certain way, reinterprets it, and makes it really speak to where we live and what we're experiencing all the time.
Yeah, and Jesus's message of the crucifixion is one of, in my opinion, the most beautiful in the course. I know that you've already given us a taste of it, but can you just go just a little bit deeper about the idea that we are to teach only love?
The main idea is that we can respond to our smaller crucifixions from a standpoint that who we really are can't be hurt. And with that sense of immunity, from that sense, we can teach only love, which is the Course's summary of the message of the crucifixion.
Right. And we look at the ways in which Jesus, right up to the point of his own death, demonstrated that he could teach only love, and all the ways in which we have, as you're saying, these minor crucifixions in our own life, and we teach from the ego. And he's such a model of what is possible for us in our life, as we've been saying throughout the podcast we've been doing leading up to Holy Week about Jesus and his message and his life as he lived it here.
It ends up being in the hands of the Course, the crucifixion ends up being an extremely practical, cogent, and inspiring message. It's not sort of the gloomy thing that, I used to go to Good Friday services where they would end in darkness and there would be a black veil draped over the cross at the front of the church. And, it was a somber time.
Right. And the Course itself acknowledges that for those of you who may not know, there goes my alarm. Those of you who may not know, at the very beginning of chapter 20, the vision of your brother, there is a section called Holy Week. And in that, he says, let us not spend this Holy Week brooding on the crucifixion of God's Son, but happily in the celebration of his release. A slain Christ has no meaning, but a risen Christ becomes the symbol of the Son of God's forgiveness upon himself, the sign that he looks upon himself as healed and whole. And so I love that you brought this part out about Friday, that yes, we are going to talk about the crucifixion, but not from this dark and gloomy place.
Yeah, I've become aware over the years of a lot of different interpretations in spirituality, but even they can be a bit dark, like it represented the crucifixion of the lower self, for instance. And the Course does something with the crucifixion that I've never encountered anywhere else. And I just think it's amazing and wonderful.
It's brilliant. Okay. Yeah. Moving on though.
Okay.
From Good Friday to Holy Saturday. And our content for Saturday is around the resurrection and how there is proof that this was an actual historical event. So do you want to say a bit more about that?
Yeah. I wouldn't say proof, but I would say there is really good evidence. And the reason we're covering that is because the Course's interpretation of the resurrection only works if the resurrection actually happened. The meaning, oftentimes I've heard, scholars say, well, the parables of Jesus, for instance, don't need to be true for them to be inspiring and edifying and so on. So the resurrection we can just see as a sort of metaphorical event that didn't happen, but it can still inspire us. But the meaning the Course gives the resurrection depends on it having actually happened. And so we'll look at some of the historical evidence for the resurrection having actually occurred. We can't establish it with certainty because it happened so long ago. There were no video cameras around. There was only certain witnesses who were interested parties. But the evidence happens to be surprisingly strong. And I think that for those of us who are open to a world in which something like that can happen, then that evidence makes the resurrection the most logical, reasonable interpretation of the data. And that sounds kind of dry. I don't think it's dry. I love this material, but it sets us up for the message of Easter Sunday, according to the course, to actually have some power and hit home.
Right. And that's a good segue, because when we go into our Easter Sunday celebration for Holy Week, the idea of Easter is that nothing can destroy truth. And so if Jesus didn't resurrect, well, then truth could be destroyed. And so the message of Easter becomes meaningless at that point. And so it will be great to go into our Easter celebration with this knowledge of what evidence we have for his actual resurrection as a historical event.
Yeah, and I think, if he wasn't actually resurrected, although the course has a little different interpretation of that, but it very much, honors and affirms the story. The tomb was empty. There were resurrection appearances of a solid flesh and blood Jesus. If that didn't happen, I think you could say, well, there's still his life and message. But the fact that it did offers a crucial demonstration, according to the course, of a central truth that is central for all of our lives.
Right. And that's the difference between a good story that can inspire through the ages and an actual demonstration that what he taught was true. And
Right.
and so I again look forward to kind of getting into the details of all of this. It is 20 past the hour. We did say this was going to be a 20-minute Facebook Live. Do you want to say anything else before we close this preview?
Well, just that, especially for those of us who have history with these dates on the calendar, maybe we went to church again and again and again on these days, to have the course's reinterpretation, to have the course still honor the events, but then give them a new meaning, a meaning which is much more practical and ultimately affirming, I think is a very meaningful thing, because we want something in us still is connected to those events, and so to take that connection and just give it a kind of a higher meaning is a really satisfying thing. And these days can become among the most important days of the year for us, given that new meaning.
Right. And the idea is to embed that new meaning and carry it beyond Holy Week to the rest of the year, and live these demonstrations in our own lives.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, Robert, thank you so very much for this. I'm so looking forward to Holy Week. This is the first time that the Circle has done anything in celebration of Holy Week or Easter. Did I get that right?
We did an Easter workshop last year, but we didn't do a whole Holy Week thing. This is a
Yeah,
total first.
I mean, like a big deal. We did do a workshop on the resurrection, so I should probably mention that. But anyway, this is new. This is dare I say special, and we are very much looking forward to it. If you would like to join Robert and I for the Circle's Holy Week calendar of events, please visit circleofa.org/events. And as I mentioned before, if you require a scholarship, please just email info@circleofa.org. We are happy to help. And we do hope to see you beginning next Sunday, this Sunday, day after tomorrow. So. All right, everyone. Thank you again for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now.